We are living in the era of high-rise buildings. Our cities cannot expand horizontally anymore, so they are expanding vertically. These high-rises make it possible to accommodate more and more people who flock to cities in search of jobs. Within India, Mumbai is the high-rise capital. By 2021, the city was home to more than 12,000 high-rise buildings. These tall towers make it possible for people to own properties in Mumbai, something that is fast becoming impossible. In 2020, almost half of all new housing projects were high-rise buildings. Tells you which way the housing industry is going. But the question is, what is the downside of this high-rise rush? Is anyone concerned about safety of these buildings? I'm asking you this question because of what has happened in Mumbai last night. A fire broke out in the 42nd floor of the RA Residency, which is a high-rise building in Mumbai. There are 46 floors in this building, out of which the fire was on the 42nd floor. Now, officials are suspecting a short circuit, but the exact reason is yet to be ascertained. The blaze was confined to electronic equipment and did not result in any casualties, thankfully. Yet, ladies and gentlemen, the fire brigade spent almost 7 hours fighting the fire. Why? Because the building's fire safeguards were not functional. The firefighters had to climb 42 floors to find the blaze and douse it. Imagine that, 42 floors. Things could have ended very differently if the fire had actually spiraled out of control. It was sheer luck that things ended the way they did. Now, the fire brigade has slapped the builder with a notice. They have also been given 4 months to fix the lapses and the mistakes. Quickly listen in to the chief fire officer and his assessment of the building's preparedness.
वहाँ पर जब फायर सेफ्टी कंप्लायंस हमने देखा है जो नहीं पाया गया है, उनके डिफंक्ट फायर सिस्टम्स थे। सर, क्या खराबी थी? उनके वाटर स्प्रिंकलर्स काम नहीं कर रहे थे, उनके फॉल्टी बूस्टर्स थे, सर क्या थे?
हमें ऐसा पता चला कि जो उन्होंने पंप चालू किया था, लेकिन उनका पाइप जो है, मेन पाइप, ऐसा कुछ फट गया कि उसमें फॉल्ट हो गया, तो पानी रिटर्न आ गया सब।
So the pumps weren't working, the sprinklers did not turn on, and the emergency elevator was defunct, which is why you had to have firefighters climb 42 floors. How do we call this a residential society? This is a ticking time bomb, a tinderbox waiting for that one fateful spark. Now, this time round, the residents were lucky to escape without any harm. But in the past, people have not been so lucky. Let's focus on similar incidents that have happened in Mumbai itself. In January 2022, 6 people were killed and 24 were injured in a 20-story building. What was the cause of the fire? An exploding air conditioner. This Wednesday, there was another fire in a 29-story building. 10 people suffered injuries from suffocation and were hospitalized. Last month, there was a fire in a 60-story building in central Mumbai. 2 firefighters were injured while battling that blaze. I could go on and I could go on citing examples, but you get the idea. While fires are not unheard of in residential societies, the question is, are these buildings equipped to deal with it? In December, the Mumbai Fire Brigade conducted a survey of high-rise buildings. They inspected around 786 hotel restaurants and 147 commercial residential buildings. Out of these, around 158 hotel restaurants and 63 buildings were given notices and asked to fix their defunct fire safety systems, meaning 20% of the hotels and 42% of residential towers had some sort of problem. But as we have seen with yesterday's case, builders are not exactly rushing to make changes. According to the law, every housing society is supposed to submit fire safety reports twice a year. Once in January and again in July. But in most cases, they're not filed. For example, in Pune, only 10 to 15 societies have actually filed that report. In such cases, the government is authorized to cut off supply like water and electricity. But such punitive actions, well, they are rarely taken. Just to be clear, all of these societies take so-called maintenance charges and service fee from all of us. But if a fire breaks out, you're all on your own despite paying that charge. Like in this case, you may have to climb 42 floors to actually reach safety. My colleague Shweta was at the site of the incident today. She sends us this report from there. Take a look.
As per the BMC report, it states that this entire building, which is a skyrocketed building, this has no compliance with fire safety. Here, this is very important to understand that the fire mechanism, what they have put up here, is not in working condition. This is what the civic body had to say. Prima facie, we understand that on the 42nd floor, there was a short circuit which happened, and later on, all the people had to come out. Very fortunately, there was no injury or casualty reported. But at the same time, we understand that here, there was no fire safety compliance.
Now, both the builder and the government is at fault here. Most construction agencies are keen to sell flats at the most attractive rates, and that often means cutting corners. But if those corners are part of the safety systems, the result could be disastrous. The question is, what can governments and departments and urban planners do to keep the builders honest, to keep out high-rise residential buildings and ensure that they are safe? I'm going to go across to my guests who are joining me this evening for a quick chat. Indrani Malkani, she's someone who works very closely with Mumbai citizens. We Citizens Action Network is something she runs. Dr. Deepak Monga is a fire safety and evacuation expert. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Neville Mehta is a CEO of Mumbai First. Thank you very much. And Ravindra Punde is a founder partner of Design Cell. Dr. Deepak Monga, can I ask you first how it is possible for a high rise where every flat probably costs upwards of 3 crore rupees not to have basic fire safety protocols in place? For example, in this case, in the case of the Mumbai building we are talking about today, the emergency lift wasn't working.
The very basic idea is, first of all, it is called the fire lift, which was not functioning because the moment there's a fire and the fire lift is in the lobby, each and every fire lifts are supposed to go down and park themselves and not to be used in time of emergency. Even if it's supposed to be used, it's supposed to be used only 5 floors below the affected area. But when the fire brigade does not know where's the fire, they can't use it. The second part is that every high-rise building has to be installed with fire evacuation lift post July 2022 as per the Energy Department's circular. But unfortunately, people are not doing so. The builders are really being not compliant with it. And we have been asking the builders to please install fire evacuation lift, because rightly what people are saying, there is no casualties. But imagine the kind of losses the building has now done, because if the fire was on the 42nd floor, the 43, 44 is completely wasted because of the carbon which has entered their houses and spoiled everything, and there are no insurance to be getting for that part. The builders will be slapped with notice, but nothing much can be given. The people who are buying the houses should be educated enough now to ensure that each and every house's occupants should have the knowledge of firefighting systems and fire evacuation systems. We have been talking about fire safety. Fire safety, ma'am, I will just make a change in this. It is not fire safety, but firefighting equipment was not working, ma'am. Fire safety was there, hence there was no casualty. But firefighting equipments did not work. This is the little loophole what people play around with. Electric fire is the most thing which is happening in this country. Ma'am, Indrani Malkani ma'am has been working on it very high. We have done conferences together, surveys together. Where we have been fighting with many people. Carbon monoxide has been going inside the flats. They have gone, and simply the flat owners are responsible for this fire, because imagine no fire suddenly becomes big. There was no fire extinguisher used to douse the fire, ma'am. Strict action should be taken even on the flat owners who did not use the fire extinguishers. And the builder who does not do anything about it.
Indrani Malkani, that's the point.
Notice. He's not doing much about it. The builder has to be like, not just saying notice.
You can keep slapping notices. You can, in this, that is exactly what I was coming to. Notices simply don't help. You probably need to be jailed for this.
Yes, a
Thankfully
strict
no
action
one,
has to be taken.
there was no casualty in this fire. But it could very well have been. Imagine you're living in buildings, and now most people are living in buildings which have 60 floors, 70 floors, and God forbid if something happens on the 60th or the 70th floor, what will happen? Can you imagine if there's a major fire that breaks out, what will happen?
Ma'am, I have been fighting for this
Indrani Malkani, we like to... Just let me get in Indrani Malkani. Indrani Malkani, while we can, blame the fire department to a certain extent to say that they are the ones responsible for fire audits, etc., why are they not more vigilant when it comes to fire audits? Fact is that citizens are to blame as well. How many times do we go and ask our societies, have you done the fire safety audit? It's supposed to be done in January and July. Have you done it? Show us what has happened. It is citizens like us who outside, near the staircase area will encroach on that area. The problem is with citizens as well, not just with the builder or the fire department.
You're very right, ma'am. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And in the very first month of the new year, you have taken up this subject. Well, I'm not at all pleased to hear about the fire that took place. This issue of safety and fire safety in particular, safety is not in our DNA. And that is the most unfortunate part. We can do a blame game, but blame game is not going to bring back life and property. Now, when we talk about fire, there are a couple of things I would like to highlight over here. Before we go to the actual fire that takes place, why is it that we do not take the correct preventive measures? We can blame everybody under the sun. The fire department comes into the picture when the incident has happened. That is when the fire takes place. Let us take this particular case that you have mentioned just now. There is a society. There is the builder. So let us look at the builder first. When a property is being built, lot of permissions are required, compliances are to be made, everything is good on paper. The fire department does check, and I can say that quite confidently, because compliance is something that without the compliance you don't get the occupation certificate, etc., etc. But can we not become a nation and a society of jugaad? Our safety is primary. So therefore, we should not be cutting corners. Having said that, you're talking about the audit part. Now, there are empaneled auditors. The societies must ensure, and it is on their website, it is not something which is not in public domain. We need to ensure that our societies, the managing committees, appoint and audit the auditor who is empaneled with the fire department. Because when an audit is done, if there is any fudging over there, we are playing with our lives. So therefore, and if there are corrective measures required, it should be forthwith taken. Now that all of these, whereas it is certainly the duty of the fire department to check if the compliances have come in, but they are not the custodian of all the buildings in a particular urban area and in a mega city like Mumbai. Do we not have responsibility ourselves? So therefore, each society needs to ensure that their equipment are in working order, that they have regular drills, and the training that goes with it. Now, when you have such huge high-rises, we look at parking, we look at gardens, we look at everything else. Equally, we have to ensure that there is a dedicated, trained fire marshals. And all of these systems are very much there with the department, with our Mumbai Fire Brigade, and they're going all out to ensure that people get trained. But if we don't come forward, how are they going to catch us? We are not in a police state.
Department,
now,
Indrani Malkani.
One other.
Indrani Malkani, can you give me a minute here? Can you give me a minute here?
Please.
I have the Mumbai Fire Chief who is joining us.
Yes.
Give me a minute. I'll come back to you. I have the Mumbai Fire Chief joining me on the show. He's on the phone line. Let me ask him a... and if there is any question you want to ask him, you can do that as well. संजय मांजरेकर जी, हमसे जुड़ने के लिए बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद. कल रात को हमने देखा कि great. संजय मांजरेकर जी, आप फोन पे जुड़े हुए हैं या नहीं? Okay. I guess our technology is playing up with us, Indrani Malkani. We'll try and reconnect with him, but go ahead, complete your point.
No problem. No, that's fine. I do work with Mr. Manjrekar and his predecessors and all of them. So, whereas, let me just highlight one point over here. The issue of prevention and mitigation which we talk about, it is not just the fire equipment. Let us start with the foundation itself. Why is it that we go for the cheaper products and not the right products where electrical safety is concerned? Because you will find the maximum causes of fire is due to electrical issues. Short circuit is such a common word. Substandard wires, equally talked about. Why is it we cut corners when we are installing and make, the electricity that we use? And mind you, electricity is like, something which is so essential in our lives, and there we cut corners. Now, if the builders have to, and we as consumers, we are the ones who buy the flats, should be equally insistent on knowing what has gone into the building, what has gone into the walls, what are the fixtures that have been put. Now, there are the Chief Electrical Inspectorate is very much there. The National Electrical Code of India 2023 is there. All of these things are there, and these are mandatory things.
Okay.
So it is not that it is not there. But what we as civil society do is we cut corners. Now, when we cut corners, we play with our lives. So mitigation and prevention, which we talk about so loosely, we talk about it. But when it comes to making sure that we have put in all the right safeguards, we don't do it. So that brings us to, the fire department comes in later. Punde, so let us look to prevention and
much
mitigation.
later. Ravindra Punde, okay. Ravindra Punde, why do we cut corners? We know why builders cut corners. We know that, citizens, buyers want a flat at a particular rate. So if safety concerns have been overlooked, that's perfectly okay. But that could be disastrous. I mean, it wasn't disastrous last evening, but it could very well end up being disastrous. Where do you pin the blame of most buildings? In fact, there was a survey in Pune that told us that when the fire department went looking for which are the buildings that have actually done this fire audit, there was only 10 to 15%. And most people in societies, even societies, said, "Oh, हमने लगा तो दिया है fire safety equipment," but no one knew what to do with it.
Right. So, I think Mr. Mehta has kind of covered some of these points very well, but I think there are a couple of things that we need to kind of worry about. One is, it's no use there is, of course, corner cutting and all the kind of stuff that builders do. But I think what is very important is societies themselves have to be vigilant. For example, buildings which are 20, 25 years old now, which are high-rise in the city, actually really need a constant audit. And I think it's for the community itself to and look at the kind of valuation these apartments have. And I don't think there is really any shortage of wealth within the community itself, but I think it's an attitude, Like I remember in one of the...
Sound has gone off.
Oops, I think Ravindra Punde's frame has frozen. Let's see if we can get him back. All right, we'll just try and get him back. Dr. Neville Mehta, would you want to come in here? There is no shortage of money in the city of Mumbai, and if you are, if you have the capacity to buy a 3 crore house, you perfectly have the capacity to demand of your building in your society 3 is very less, 5 crores, 10 crores. You very well have the capacity to tell your builder and tell your society, you better ensure that I'm getting my money is worth. If nothing else, if I'm living in a 70-story building, that I'm safe here. If there's a lift, firefighters don't have to climb 70 floors to get there by the time the damage has been done.
I agree with you. 3 crores is now the flat, not the flat price, but the price of a garage in a building. or parking space. So that's what the valuation looks like. But having said that, I mean, I think that, you know, we are used to, as Indians, getting into, you know, post-activation. We don't believe in pre-activation. If we had all done due diligence before buying flats, actually finding out what we are buying, whether it has got all the necessary NOCs in place, and if the government would enforce all the rules that they make, then these issues would never crop up. The problem is there are rules in place. There are you know, statements made by the government that, you know, we would do this, we would do that, but unfortunately nobody practices them. I mean, if the builder has not done his due diligence and has actually jeopardized the lives of the citizens and the people who are buying his flat where he's making a fat profit, then if he has not done his job, he should be penalized. His license to build all future buildings should be suspended immediately, forthwith. Now, once we have these rules which are already framed out, which is, you know, been discussed, you know, brainstormed over the years, it's gone through the various systems that it has to go through, and if you don't implement it, it's going to just we are just going to keep talking about it. And what is going to happen is, this is a small problem when it started, because we didn't have those high-rise buildings. Now, if you go to Parel and all these places, the buildings are 70 floors, and we are now talking about people like, you know, the Lokhandwalas and the Lodas, who want to, you know, start competing with each other by making 100 floors and 120 floors. Now, where is this going to stop? And how long are we going to keep pointing fingers, maybe at the fire officer or maybe the BMC? I mean, they are all involved in it. I mean, we all are all involved in it. It's not a problem which is a singular problem. It's a comprehensive problem. You have to understand how big it is and how comprehensive it is. I mean, the fire brigade chief, how did he allow the NOC to be given by the BMC if the fire equipment was not compliant or it was not working? Why did the BMC give an NOC to that building to say, okay, you can start selling your flats? I mean, there has to be some due diligence. And why is it that the builder has yet moving around scot-free? And why is it that the society head, the chairman and the secretary of societies are never hauled up? Because they are taking maintenance charges. If they are taking a position to safeguard the interest of the society, then they are so liable to do that. So what I'm trying to say is, we as Indians should stop pointing the finger and stop passing the ball around, you know. Yeah, that's where I am.
And take some responsibility. Ravindra Punde, you were making a point. Making a point. Unfortunately, your frame did freeze. Go ahead, complete the point you were making, as we are just about to end the show. But please go ahead and finish your point.
Yeah, so quickly, I just wanted to say that I think communities and societies themselves have a responsibility which I think they should fulfill. I don't think right now we have every other regulation in place, really, you know, and it's still not working. But I think the more important thing is to do that. Number two is, I don't know if there is adequate drills and, you know, training of personnel for high-rise buildings. You can have personnel who's, because the first 15, 20 minutes before the fire brigade gets there, the damage is done, right? A lot of damage already gets. So I think these things become very important elements, number one. Number two, I think our urban regulations, because of the builder lobby pressures, are just becoming, I should say, reckless with safety, particularly on the fire part. Podiums are built, you know, access to these places are not necessarily always very easy for fire tenders to move in, and all of those. So this preventive aspect is, I think, far more important actually than putting regulations and rules, because we can pile rules after rules. And I don't think we would, at this point, with the level of corruption in our country, I don't think it's going to be any meaningful result. But I think it's very important for communities to act themselves. Right. That's it. I mean,
and ask the right questions, to the right people. Ravindra Punde, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Mehta, thank you very much. Dr. Monga, thank you very much. And Indrani Malkani, good to have you on the show. I hope our viewers have taken away something from this show as well. Ask the right questions of your society and your builder. It could end up saving your life one day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Good night.